What's up guys, Nemo Propaganda here, and today we're going to check out the Spendor Classic 3.1. I've never reviewed a Spendor speaker before. This is the first time. I've been wanting to check out this brand for a long time. Never knew how to get a hold of them. And they're from England, so it's tough, guys, to get a hold of these companies that are in other countries. But Upscale Audio came through and they made this review happen. Special thank you to them for providing the review sample. Let me get those main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about some specs and standout features, what the speaker sounds like, what I like about it, if there's anything I don't like about it, how it compares to some other speakers in and around this price category. We'll talk about amplifier pairing, and then we'll wrap up the video. So first, let me say this. If you've ever wondered, if you've ever watched my videos and you've wondered, I wonder what that guy likes personally. Like, you probably appreciate that I review all this gear and I tell you what stuff sounds like. But you might wonder, like, what do I like? What's my personal taste, right? Because like, I'll review stuff and tell you like what it sounds like, and I might seem excited in the video. That doesn't mean I personally like it or I would personally want to own it, right? That would be a bad reviewer, right? If that's all I did, you know what I mean? Like, I got to separate my personal taste from the review. There's been many products I've actually reviewed favorably that were not to my personal taste, because personal taste, you know, there's like no accounting for it, right? But if you want to know what I like, the sound, what I love, it's this. This is the sound I like. The Spendor Classic 3.1 is the sound that just does it for me. This is like end game for me. Once I have a sound like this, I love it. I love it. And as you watch this video, you're going to understand why. Those of you that have followed my content for a long time, this is going to come of no surprise, because this is basically like a version of one of my favorite speakers on absolute steroids. And we'll get to that in a second, right? So standout features: beautiful wood cabinet, made in England, 7-inch bass driver, pretty cool stuff around back. Look, you got a pair of binding posts. Looks like we got maybe a 1-inch soft dome tweeter, right? You do have grills. They are magnetic. I did use the speaker with and without the grill. My room's treated. I didn't really notice an issue. Some people might say, hey, you should leave the grill on because, you know, there's this little bit of an edge here. I don't know about that kind of stuff, guys. But all I know is I use them both ways. And in my rooms, the speaker sounded fantastic, whether I had the grills on or off. Half the time I used a subwoofer, the other half the time I didn't use a subwoofer, right? So all of my listening impressions are going to be without a subwoofer unless I say otherwise. Let's jump into what the speaker sounds like. Top end, yes, we have some details, sure. Yes, we have some air and space, sure. But it's slightly pulled back. It's on the darker side of neutral just a little bit. Very easy on the ears. I like to listen for 2-3 hours at a time, guys. If you're like me and you like those really extended listening sessions, the Spendor Classic 3.1 is a beaut when it comes to that. Very easy treble, very easy to listen to, still refined. You still have detail and detail retrieval. Now, it's not going to give you like extra detail. It's not going to dig into your recording. No, that's not what this one does. Spendor makes other speakers. Not all their speakers are voice dark. This one is, right? This one is made to be relaxed. You want to pull out your old recordings that maybe aren't the best? This is not going to rip them apart. Matter of fact, it's going to make them sound twice as good, right? The treble is fantastic. The key takeaway here: relaxing, easy on the ears, slightly dark side of neutral. Moving down to the mid-range, organic, warm, tonally rich, with heft to it, with thickness to it, right? Whether it's male voices or, you know, female voices that are breathy and you can hear that like body and weight to it, or the strum of a guitar, or whatever it may be in the mid-range, there is heft to it. There is body to it. There is weight to it. And a large sense of scale that all sounds fairly effortless. And moving down to the bass, you guessed it, lots of it. Very powerful, very confident. It supports the whole foundation. And this is the sound I like. And if you've been following me for a long time, I just basically also described the Bucard S400 Mark II, which is my favorite speaker in the whole wide world. Oh, that was a bit of a tongue twister there. Am I getting messed? You can't make this stuff up, guys. You cannot make this stuff up. I got tongue twisted trying to say tongue twister. Anyway, look, the Bucard S400 Mark II is one of my favorite speakers, and that's how that speaker is voiced. And that's also how this speaker is voiced. That is like $2,200 bucks. This is $4,500, right? Are they the same just because their voice is the same? No, 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 no. When we get into comparisons, you know what? Let's do it. Let's jump into comparisons, and I'll make that comparison right away because I brought it up. The $4,500 pair Spendor Classic 3.1 is a bigger speaker. It's going to stage larger. It's going to sound a little bit more effortless, especially in the bass region and especially when pushed at louder volumes. I love the Bucard S400 Mark II, but if you really... Sorry guys, this is like my fourth video in a row that I'm filming. I'm starting to lose my voice. You might not know this, I batch my content. I'm not out here filming every single weekend, guys. I got a life. I sit down and I'll bang out like 4 or 5 reviews in a row, edit them, get them all uploaded. Anyways, especially when you crank the volume, the Spendor Classic 3.1 can hold onto its bass control and composure and have that powerful extension and output into much louder volumes than the smaller Bucard S400 Mark II can. Now look, if you've got a small space, that might not be an issue, right? But those of you that were able to find the limits of the Bucard S400 and you really liked that sound, Spendor Classic 3.1 might be for you. Now let's talk about the mid-range. Both have weight and body and organics and tonal richness in the mid-range. The Spendor Classic 3.1 is a little bit tonally richer. It has a little bit more space and fidelity within that mid-range and stages a little bit larger and is a little bit more effortless. Moving up to the treble, both speakers are slightly on the dark side of neutral. Both have about equal amounts of resolution. The attack of the Spendor is ever so slightly softer than the S400 Mark II, so it's slightly more relaxing. Both speakers are really good, but overall the Spendor Classic 3.1, it's going to stage larger, it's going to be able to play louder, and it's going to have better bass control, kind of regardless of volume, and it's going to be able to play that bass much louder as well, right? So, I mean, it is more expensive. That is no surprise. It's like a Bucard S400 Mark II on steroids, if you will, and that's the kind of sound I like. So I love this speaker. Let's compare it to some other stuff that's a little bit more price appropriate though, right? So $4,500 a pair. I know the Cabas Murano are gone now. Those are no longer available for sale from Upscale, but other dealers in the US do have them. That speaker still exists. And I gave that speaker a Product of the Year award for its full price of about $4,400. So they're within $100 of each other, right? Let's do that comparison. The Cabas Murano, bookshelf, of course, in the high frequencies is going to be neutral or ever so slightly on the forward side of neutral, perhaps by direct comparison to something like the Spendor Classic 3.1 that's on the dark side of neutral. So totally different in the treble region. The Cabas Murano, of course, is going to have more air to it. It's going to have, more sparkle and air and such. It just has more treble energy than the laid back and relaxed Spendor Classic 3.1. One is not better than the other. This is going to come down to personal taste, what you like, right? Moving down in the mid-range, both speakers are going to be on the warm side of neutral, having good tonal richness and texture to them. The Cabas Murano is just a little warm, however, whereas the Spendor Classic 3.1 is a lot warmer, a lot richer, a lot more organic, right? So again, one is not better than the other. This is going to come down to personal taste. Some people like just a little bit of warmth and heft. Some people like a lot more warmth and a lot more heft. The Spendor Classic 3.1 has the more warmth, the more heft, the more body. Moving down to the bass, both speakers have very strong, very good, very muscular, powerful, and well-controlled bass. The bass of the Murano is a little bit tighter. The bass of the Spendor Classic 3.1 is a little bit more tuneful. Again, one is not better than the other. This is just going to come down to personal taste. The two speakers really couldn't be more different. I like both a lot. I can listen to both of them for hours. I don't have a set of Murano bookshelves myself. That review sample is long gone, but I did have them here at the same time. And I liked both of these speakers so much. On a personal level, the Spendor Classic 3.1 is more my kind of sound, but some complaints some people might have, if you're used to a more brighter, energetic sound, you may feel the mid-range is not as open and expansive, for example, right? You may feel the top end is not giving you as much detail, perhaps. There's two types of customers, guys. Here, let's say this. On the two sides of the extreme, right? There's your detail customers. You guys want as much detail as possible. You want to hear the saliva in the singer's mouth. You say there can't be too much detail. You want to hear as much as possible, even if you're not supposed to hear it, right? Then all the way on the other side, there's the guy that likes tonal richness and warmth, and he believes you can't have too much. He wants his speakers almost to sound like he's inside of an acoustic guitar. It's as warm as possible, right? And there's trade-offs. The guy that has it as warm as possible is going to give up some clarity, some openness, some air. The guy that's all the way on the detail side, he's going to give up some organics, some tonal richness, some dimensionality and such, right? Then there's people somewhere in the middle, of course, right? The Spendor Classic 3.1 is more towards the side of warm by a good amount, and it's going to reward you with that tonal richness. If that is what you value, I think you're going to love it. But if you are more the detail first customer, guys, there's other speakers out there. The Focal Canton #1, that's you like detail. That's a good option. There's the Platamon. That's another great one that, it's got a ton of detail. Matter of fact, let's talk about the Platamon. That's $6,000 for the pair. This is $4,500. So there's quite the price disparity, right? Platamon billet aluminum cabinet, so perhaps a little bit more expensive to make. Spendor Classic 3.1 is not a billet aluminum cabinet, but let's set that aside and just talk about the sound differences. And let's remember the Platamon is $6,000 for the pair. The Platamon treble is going to be on the forward side of neutral, where the Spendor Classic 3.1 is going to be on the dark side of neutral. Moving down to the mid-range, the Platamon continues with its neutrality. It's going to have more of an analytical nature in the mid-range. If you want any warmth in the mid-range, if you want tonal richness in the mid-range with the Platamon, your amplifier is going to have to bring that to the table. The Platamon is not here to provide any of that. Conversely, the Spendor Classic 3.1 does bring that to the table. What's the difference here? Well, the Platamon will sound more open, expansive, and detailed overall. It is the more detail-focused analytical speaker, where the Spendor is here more for tunefulness, tone, texture, warmth, and richness in that mid-range. Moving down to the bass, both speakers have good, strong bass. The Platamon is a little bit tighter, where the Spendor is a little bit more tuneful. Again, these two speakers are even more different than the Murano Spendor comparison. The Platamon is even more on the side of detail, right? It is really for that like detail lover, the person that loves openness and expansiveness almost above all else. It does happen to do it in a way that is somewhat natural, which is a huge selling point for that speaker, but that's another story altogether. Let's see if there's anything else around this price I can compare it to. How about that Fine Audio Vintage 5? That's $5,000 for the pair. This one is $4,500. I'll be honest, Fine Audio makes a great speaker. They do. But I can't help but feel for $500 less, you're getting a lot from the Classic 3.1, but the sound is very different. So this is, again, more of a case of different, not better. By the way, all these comparisons so far have been a case of different, not better. Personal taste is huge. When we're shopping in this price category, guys, most stuff is really good, right? There aren't really any $4,500 speakers that are like not good. You know what I mean? Perhaps maybe some old ones that are long in the tooth, but that's another story. So the Fine Audio Vintage 5 is considerably smaller. That wood cabinet is almost like artisan grade. So I will give like the final just fit and finish to the Fine Audio Vintage 5. It looks like it was made by hand by like a watchmaker. You know what I mean? The attention to detail, the little details in the design, it is phenomenal to look at, to hold, to touch. Even the grill is nicer. Everything about the build quality of the Fine Audio Vintage 5 is a step up compared to the Classic 3.1, but the Classic 3.1 is no slouch. It's made well in its own right. The Fine Audio Vintage 5 is just on another level. Now, let's do the sound comparison. So starting with the treble, the Fine Audio Vintage 5 is going to be a little bit more on the forward side of neutral compared to the Classic 3.1. The Classic 3.1 is going to be more tonally rich, even in that treble region, more relaxed and dark. The Fine Audio is going to be giving you a little bit more detail in a natural way. It's not like really boosted and shoving treble down your ear by any means, but it is more open and airy in the treble region than the Classic 3.1. Moving down to the mid-range, extremely different presentations. The Fine Audio Vintage 5 is all about expansiveness in the mid-range. It is almost a mid-range centric speaker. It is almost like that is what it's trying to show you is the mid-range. So it's very expansive. It's front and center. The Classic 3.1 is totally different. Again, warm, tonally rich. I've said it like 50 times already. You guys know what I'm saying here. Tonally, these two speakers couldn't be more different in the mid-range. Moving down to the bass, massive difference. The Fine Audio Vintage 5 is a very small speaker. You know, if you can get it to have some, you know, not all the way up against the wall, of course, right? But get it to have some boundary reinforcement, and it'll have some good, nice full mid bass to it. But it is not giving you that powerful, juicy, thick bass that the Classic 3.1 that is substantially larger is going to deliver. It's also not going to stage quite as large as the larger Classic 3.1. Some of these differences, guys, they simply come down to size. There's no surprise there. So that's that comparison out of the way. Let's talk about amplification. I absolutely preferred the Spendor Classic 3.1 on more analytical amps like my Kinky Studio pre and mono blocks. I did use the CHoco EMEI. I found that I love the CHoco EMEI. It's a great amp, but that's also a little bit warmer and tonally rich. And I felt it was a little bit too much of a good thing. I did use the Burnoco Terra, and you know, that's only a 20 watt class A tube amp. So I would have probably wanted a little bit more power considering the Spendor Classic 3.1 have so much bass. But basically what I would recommend for the Spendor Classic 3.1 is an amp that airs neutral, if not slightly analytical, and has a good amount of power. Not because the speaker is hard to drive. In fact, the speaker is not hard to drive. It's just bass sucks up wattage fairly quickly. And if you like to play loud, you just want to make sure you have your power reserves there to support that 7-inch bass driver in just being able to breathe as effortlessly as possible. So I said at the beginning of the video, and I'll say it again, love this speaker. It is the kind of sound I like. I can listen to it for hours and hours and hours and hours. And this is me. This is my taste. If you've ever wondered, this is it. I certainly can appreciate the more analytical sound also. Those Platimons I talked about, I own a set of Platimons. I can really appreciate that analytical sound also. But this is the sound Nemo Propaganda lives for. This is the sound Nemo Propaganda loves. If you corner me and you're like, you can only have one speaker, like for the rest of your life, like, no matter what are you picking, right? Like one of those really loaded questions, like it would be something like this. Like this is the type of sound I would pick. Straight up. You know what I mean? So look, I don't usually get this personal or let like this much of my personal opinion out, but you guys have asked me for years, like, what do I like personally? And like, this just seemed like a good opportunity to let you guys know. And look, just to be clear, just because I like it, it doesn't mean you necessarily will, right? Personal taste is a huge factor in this hobby, guys. I just wanted to share this with my audience because you guys have always asked, you guys have always wondered, what's the sound Nemo Propaganda likes, right? So there you go. If you have any questions, YouTube channel does have a free Discord server. Feel free to hop in. The link is in the description of all my videos. If you do use that Discord server, be a reasonable human being. Don't be weird. Be polite. You can also ask your question in the YouTube comments below. Until next time, take care.